Hey, this is Doug Field, and welcome back to this segment of HealthCare Consumerism Radio. I'm joined along with my co-host Brent Macy, and our continued discussion on marketplaces. And joining us today is Annette Bechtold, VP of Regulatory Affairs and Reform Initiatives for Digital Insurance, which is one of the country's largest employee benefit agencies, and they've recently rolled out an exchange. So welcome to the program, Annette.
Thanks very much, Doug.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about your exchange model and what you guys are doing, and then we'll get into some deeper discussions on it.
Yeah, for the private exchange, we're focused on groups of all sizes, really looking at bringing them choice models for their employees. I think the big thing is that, as your show says, and many others, consumerism is the big thing, and with the individual mandate, individuals are now, whether they're through your employer or solely, you're going to be looking to understand what it is you're buying.
Yeah.
There's nobody kind of making those purchasing decisions. Well, employers, too, I think, are looking for ways to, number one, control their costs, but also to allow people to have better selection and to customize their benefit programs a little bit better for their families. So knowing there's a lot out there. So our platform really does that. It helps the employer. The employer sets aside a defined contribution, a certain amount of money that basically each of their employees can then shop with. So we offer a storefront, if you will, because that's the best way to, I think, for most people to understand exchanges. It's a storefront. Here's the store. Here are the products and services inside that store.
Are you providing both an individual and or group model that your brokers can customize?
Our private exchange model is based upon, at this current time, is based upon an employer model, really, where that employer is selecting, putting up a defined contribution, and then we have products within that the employees can choose from.
Okay.
We are working on, we have not launched anything, but we are working on an individual one as well.
Got it. And you are providing the complete benefit experience, going beyond just major medical and embracing the ancillary supplemental health benefit choices that employer would like to include?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And in fact, we think that's probably the biggest key. Medical always is the focal point for everything, but it isn't what 100% of people need. Very often families, they have access to medical in more than one place. And we think that a lot of the things that are missed that are just as crucial are definitely things that replace income if you're disabled or, additional life insurance or those types of things. So we'll have the full array of ancillary products from, your traditional dental, vision, disability, and life to accident-type plans and things that help mitigate out-of-pocket as well, out-of-pocket expenses.
What is the most confusing aspect from an employer perspective as to how private exchanges work in the also public exchange environment?
It's kind of getting all muddled because I think that you're absolutely right. I think employers are kind of confused about what's the difference between a public exchange or marketplace and what does that do for me compared to these private marketplaces. So I think the best way to describe it is, a public exchange is run by a governmental entity, and they're going to have a subset of what's available in the marketplace as a whole. And their goal is to satisfy the requirements of the law of healthcare reform in delivering the health insurance. The private exchanges or private marketplace is really a much broader store that carries a lot more things. So I guess it's looking is it a specialty store versus a department store that handles many different things. And I think that's kind of the best way to look at it. If you're looking at something that is only available as part of a governmental run program, such as a subsidy. So if you're looking for help with premium because of your income level, you're looking for help with that premium, the subsidies we've heard about in the exchanges, or you're a small business and you're looking for your small business tax credit, again, a governmental type program, then you're going to have to use a public exchange to buy your product.
Annette, this is Brent. I guess if you look at the public exchange and the concept behind the public exchange, and then you look at the concept behind the private exchange, is the private exchange, are you guys benefiting from a government exchange that is somewhat the same type setup. They're validating, hey, this is, private exchange, you're gonna go in and be able to get your benefits. Public exchange, you're gonna be able to go in and get your benefits. Is the public exchange validating an exchange concept and helping you all as a business?
I think it's raising awareness.
Yeah.
I don't know that and I think it's making it more of a customary term or customary experience for buying benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So from that aspect, I would say yes.
Okay.
From what's going to be contained in it and how it's going to be run and the services, I would say no.
Okay.
Annette, how are did you find your broker embracing of this defined contribution exchange model?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think for a long time, one of the things as brokers and as advocates for employers, one of the things that we've really, that has plagued us for, the past decade are the costs to the employer, and that becomes more and more prohibitive as time goes on because the increases have been high. It's very hard for them to afford things. This brings a greater choice to employees as well as more of a defined financial commitment for the employers. And I think people, very often what happens is employers want to do what's best, but they sometimes overbuy on behalf of somebody else because they're guessing what people need. And I think this will be a truer, I think everybody kind of wins in this environment, and that the employer's doing what they can afford, but then with that, each employee is saying, here's what really is valuable to me and my family.
Annette, do you see employers out there or brokers' clients that have been employers, do you see them, taking baby steps towards a private exchange, or do you see them flipping the switch and saying, hey, this is where we're going, and we're going here rather quickly?
I think as we get closer to January 1, it's picked up momentum. People are looking for that experience. I think you still have an element of, and I think as individuals understand more of their obligations and kind of push that to employers and saying, are you going to help me with this or not?
Right.
I think that's really going to escalate the popularity. But we're seeing a lot of interest, a lot of people saying it makes a lot of sense, and they are two places where they have to understand what do I have to do, what do I need to do, what do my employees, and try to figure out where those converge. And this is, as we're talking through it, is a much better model for them. Yeah.
We see a lot of in talking to employers that are members of the Institute. We see X amount of adoption this fall, but a tremendous wait and see on the path on the part of employers that, as they see private exchanges and defined contribution working with others this fall, I think you're going to hear a giant sucking sound for 2015.
And I don't think that's unusual in anything new. If you think about to the employer market over the past even 2 or 3 decades, as things change, there is, and I think not even this subject, any subject, there's always a reluctance to move to what's something new and unknown, and a wait-and-see type of approach of saying, sounds good or might be too good to be true, or what else is going to change that that's not even going to be good in the long run? Do I really want to go through all that headache and heartache on the way there? So I do think there's elements of that. I think also because you're probably seeing that magnified too, especially for employers due to the mandate delay and some of the other things. There's a big consensus among employers of saying, okay, so what else is going to change? And we're hopeful that there's other things that might change. So I think there's still some of that left as well.
And then, when are your marketplaces going to be opening up this fall? When do you see them opening up across the country?
Well, we have one that we opened last fall, actually.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah, we opened our marketplace in Vermont last fall, and that's doing very well. We're getting ready to open, I think 4 more. That'll probably be ready pretty close to the same time. We've got a couple gearing up for October, and then a few more for January. We're also probably going to be opening an ancillary-only marketplace.
Oh, really?
Nationally.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so So if there are, employers that are, because this will also, as opposed to the public exchange, which will only serve your small employers,
right.
The private marketplace that we have will serve much larger employers too. So if they're self-funding medical or they're doing some other things, they might, we may or may not use the actual platform for that, or we might, so it just depends. But then there'll be an ancillary-only play as well for those employers who might say, you know what, I don't offer medical anymore.
Annette, I have a question. If I'm an employer and I put in this private exchange, what now becomes my role in delivering this option to my employee population?
As an employer, really it's the communication piece, which we do help with.
Okay.
And that's to, first to understand, okay, what's different, how's that different? But in the design of the and I think this is kind of what sets some of the private marketplaces apart from others, it's really the decision-making tools within it for that individual. So when you're sitting down and going through that experience of, okay, I'm online, I have to go to a particular website for my employer, and now it's going to walk me through all the choices I need to make and understand how this works. So I think that's really key in how successful that is. And I think employers really have to look at their population, too, and say who's amenable to that kind of a program. Now, we had a couple, I will tell you, in the ones that we did last time, we had a couple groups that really weren't quite the computer-savvy populations or that were amenable to an online-type shopping experience, because that's sort of what it equates to. And so there was more people kind of sitting with them, assisting them to do that, if you will. So there's that model there too. So it really is I think for an employer, it's really understanding who they have and explaining to them why they need to do this, how this is in their best interest. I think the better they set that communication up on the front end, the better the experience will be for the employees and the better outcomes they'll have. And then after that, there's really not a lot that they have to do. That portal sits up all year, and as they have new hires, the next people go on and make their elections and do all that kind of thing. So it becomes a nice pickup for employers on the administrative side too.
So the selling points are really your healthcare. You can control your healthcare costs better, and then you can also the overall workload is lessened when you're putting in a private exchange, right?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely.
And I think at the same time, you're presenting your employees with more of a complete benefit experience.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
right, and hopefully they're learning a little bit more along the way about, wow, what do I really need, and starting to think about that instead of, okay, here's 3 or 4 things my employer gives me, yes or no. I don't know. Hopefully they're learning a little bit more and thinking a little bit more about, what makes sense for my family? What do we have access to someplace else, too, and how do I supplement so we have even more coverage than we probably did in the past?
Annette, we've got about a minute to go yet. I'd like to let you give our audience a couple takeaways that you'd like to leave them with, if you would, please.
I think the big thing is really knowledge. I mean, from my perspective, I spend a lot of time either doing seminars or talking to individuals, or I think that the significant thing is to learn as much as you can and understand what your choices are. I think we've done a great job of sheltering a lot of people, so I think if anything, getting out and just talking to people, helping them to understand what their individual responsibilities are is probably key coming forward. And I know that the federal government is spending a lot on communicating that, but that's a lot different than somebody who's an advocate for a particular person sitting down and saying, hey, here's how this affects you, and here's how you have to get involved, and you have to start that think and take responsibility for you and your families. I think that's a big piece. So I think that's number one, is to understand what is going on in your particular marketplace as well. What options are going to be available to me, and understand what that means.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the program today, Annette. We really appreciate your time, and have a great weekend. And to the rest of our audience, stay tuned for the final segment of HealthCare Consumerism Radio.